Hey YouTube, right here. All right. I was going ahead and I was just watching a couple programs. I got hit with insomnia and all that. But I noticed something, and I decided to go ahead and take a look into it. I noticed that I tend to root for the underdog very often, and I was wondering exactly how common of a thing that is. Well, I decided to go ahead and take a quick look into it, and apparently it's not uncommon for people to root for the underdog. Well, some studies have been done into it, and it usually comes down to kind of a sense of fairness. And so that got me thinking. I was just all like, I wonder like how deeply that permeates into our way of thinking. Well, apparently it's actually pretty fucking deep, because when I actually started sitting down and thinking about it and thinking about, online interactions, the news, so on, so forth, all these different aspects, not just competitive aspects as far as like sports and so on and so forth, because of course you're going to root for the underdog. You want to see the underdog win for an upset. It's exciting. But I decided to take a look into more of your standard day-to-day shit. Like when you are sitting down and watching a movie. Let's say you're watching a romantic comedy, right? And it looks like the main character is just gonna constantly be losing out, constantly be the second fiddle, and that sort of thing. I'm talking about when you're blue-pilled. Once you're red-pilled, you're all like, dude, you keep getting every opportunity to get away. Take the opportunity. Go off and do your own thing. But I digress. But the thing is I then started thinking about it in real world terms, because I was sitting there and thinking more along entertainment value, and as I noticed that continued pattern in entertainment value, I was like, all right, well, what about like as far as actual expectations in the world? And I noticed that, yeah, there's still that pattern there. But I also noticed how it can turn really dark really quick. How people use that mentality, whether they knowingly use it or if they're manipulating it just subconsciously, for more nefarious purposes. Like with feminism, with social justice. All of us are constantly asking, why in the hell are you sitting here and blatantly lying about these statistics? Why are you blatantly lying about the facts of life? Why are you blatantly ignoring this, that, and the other, when the group that you're so against has all these problems going against them? 1 minute. Sorry about that. But when these groups have these very obvious things going against them, these very obvious problems, why do they go ahead and all of a sudden, oh, well, studies don't matter, statistics don't matter, those problems don't matter, that sort of thing. Yet when the groups that they're fighting for have the exact same issue, even if it's on a much lesser scale, they all of a sudden it's the most important thing in the fucking planet. Like, for example, genital mutilation. When people bitched and complained, about circumcision and all the damage that it causes to males, everyone's all like, oh, well, it's religious practice, and that sort of thing. It's not that big of a deal. But as soon as female genital mutilation comes along, all of a sudden it's this horrible thing, and we need to pass laws to prevent this from happening. We don't care if it's a religious thing. It's just wrong. But that's not so much an underdog thing as much as it is just gynocentrism. But gynocentrism is also very much so based in the underdog mindset. So, let's go ahead and go to a real situation where they fucking manipulate shit and trying to make a group look like the underdog, trying to get people to be more on their side. Muslim. A lot of people don't know Muslim history. They don't know the history of Islam. Just like the people don't know why the Crusades were actually launched. A lot of people think that the Crusades were launched because of... Really? But people think that the Crusades were launched for financial reasons. It actually wasn't. The Crusades were actually launched because Christians were being persecuted to the point of full-fledged extortion. In the quote-unquote Holy Land. Because Islam had taken over in that area. The Caliphate was there. And so the Crusaders went off to war. But the thing is if you actually look at the number of Muslims, are there less Muslims than there are Christian? We don't know for sure, but the numbers are actually relatively close. And the thing is they use the argument of, oh, well, there's so few Muslims, to get people into the country. But now, in these countries where Muslims are there, they're all like, well, look at how many Muslims there are in this country. Shouldn't they have a greater say? You see, that's how it happened. The Muslim belief didn't just boom into existence all of a sudden. It didn't just boom into these high numbers. These high numbers have always been there. It's just they've been concentrated in Islamic states, Islamic countries. What they were doing was they were using manipulation. They were saying, look at how few Muslims there are here. But instead of saying here, they said, look at how few Muslims there are. They're a minority. A vast minority. When that blatantly isn't the case. In fact, Muslims are second only to Christians as far as numbers, and that's a very close second. And Christians are by no means a minority. And also, because they're so close to them, Muslims are not a minority, at least not a vast minority, not one worthy of protection. But they used the underdog mentality that is kind of ingrained into us. It's programmed into us for a sense of fairness. And so here we are. But I know that's not the reason why you all are here. You want to know how the underdog principle goes with social justice warriors, not just on as far as Muslims are concerned, but also as far as feminism is concerned. Well, it's the same thing. Perfect example are colleges. Colleges keep saying, oh, well, we need more women in college. We need more women in college. We need more gender parity in college. Well, if they were actually going for gender parity, they'd be trying to get more men into college. But they're not. They're trying to get more women in, even though women, in the vast majority of higher education, make up the overwhelming majority of students. And this is for several reasons, all reasons that I've covered in previous videos. You want to know about it? Go ahead and watch my previous videos. But it's them sitting there and trying to keep that underdog mentality in their favor. Because as soon as it comes out that men are actually technically the underdog at this point, which we are, I mean, as far as social and legal aspects, men are the underdogs. Men have got everything working against us. We don't have anything working for us, not in our favor. Like men being used as nothing but a utility, or viewed as nothing but a utility. That's not exactly a positive. Our humanity comes second to our utility. That's not something that the overdog's gonna fucking have. That's something that the underdog's gonna have going against them. Another thing that the underdog's going to have going against them is lack of numbers. Well, take a look at the U.S. Look at the demographic. 51% female. Technically, men are the underdog. I mean, if they're going to sit there and try to say that Muslims are the underdog, even though they're right there along with Christians, well, guess what? Then men are the underdog. But they don't want you to know that. The underdog tends to have more issues going against them. Whether it be lack of funding. Well, look at financial aid. Vast majority of it goes to women. Even though there are just as many needy men. In fact, there are even more needy men. There are men that are in more dire straits than women. There are more homeless men. There are more men without jobs that are actively looking for jobs. I'm not saying the ones that are just not working and don't want to work. But I'm talking about ones that are actively looking for work but are being held back from it. Women are now making up the majority of the workforce. Yet they're saying that we need more women in the workforce. And we need less men in the workforce. And then they point to men and say, well, look at how many men are unemployed. Again, swinging back around to men being viewed as a utility. But they never mention that they're viewing the men as a utility. They're not mentioning that they're not viewing men as human at that point. We are nothing but a means to an end. Which is, again, something that's very common in an underdog story. Being used and abused. Another thing that is very common in an underdog story is as soon as the underdog starts to work their way up, well, the overdog can't have that. The overdog starts to feel threatened, and so the overdog punches down. A perfect example of that one, Anita Sarkeesian. She's got all this money coming in. All these fucking supporters and so on and so forth. All these people that she's duped into thinking that she's actually got any level of virtue whatsoever. As soon as she actually sees Sargon, boom, she punches down. She tries to go ahead and remove his humanity or lessen his humanity, his worth as a human. Doesn't give an opportunity for a rebuttal, just straight punches down. And then when called out on it, she has to go ahead and re-up her appearance of being the underdog. That false facade of hers. Saying, oh, well, I was feeling threatened. Yes, you were feeling threatened, but the overdog would feel threatened when the underdog is sitting right there. When the underdog is right on the overdog's heels. Of course, the overdog's going to feel threatened at that point. Another underdog story that's very common is the underdog tends to actually be coming from a morally superior place. The thing is when I say morally superior, I'm talking about being for equality, being about fairness, so on and so forth. That's the reason why a lot of people vote for the underdog. Perfect example of that. Take a look at the movie The Replacements. The pro players went on strike because they were bitching and whining and pissing and moaning about not making enough money. And so the scab players came in and they started outperforming what the professionals were able to do against all odds. But they were doing it for the love of the game. They were doing it because it was something that they had always wanted to do. Whereas the pro players were doing it for nothing more than the money. They thought that their shit didn't stink. And so what happens? The pro quarterback crosses the picket line, comes back, takes back his position, and then starts ruining the fucking team. And so, of course, you, as the observer, end up hating that pro player. Because he's coming from a morally bankrupt position. And you cheer when he gets fucking sidelined, and when the scab quarterback comes back in and fucking wins the game. Typical of an underdog story. Well, here's the thing. More and more people are now waking up and seeing who the true underdogs who the true underdogs are in this situation. Because it's kind of hard to say that study after study after study after study done by multiple groups with very different affinities, different associations with other groups. It's very difficult to say that each and every one of those was paid off. Each and every one of those was tainted. But the thing is a lot of that stuff doesn't actually get reported on mainstream media. Well, luckily for us, people are stopping their trust in mainstream media. They've lost their confidence in it. So, what happens? Well, people come to alternative media sites, YouTube channels, kind of like this one. Then you've got social media. You've got people that are looking at that, getting access that way. People who are going out and actually looking at stuff because shit's just not quite making sense yet. Other websites that are sitting there and constantly posting the real news instead of this alternative fact bullshit. The doctored information. People want that raw information so they can bring their own judgment into play instead of having someone else's judgment force-fed to them. So, here we are. See, the problem is with pretty much any underdog story, you typically have that one part in it where the overdog tries to make themselves appear to be the underdog. And they sell people on it fairly readily. But there's always that one or two that sit there and, that one or two people that go, no, that doesn't make sense. And they start pointing that shit out. Whether it be the underdog, friends of an underdog, or even the enemies of an underdog who are finally sitting there going, no, you know what? I got respect for this motherfucker. This fucker has some fucking chops. And so they start standing up for the underdog. And what happens at that point? People blow up at the overdog for lying to them, for deceiving them, for manipulating them. Well, we're starting to see that with social justice warriors. But we're also seeing something else that happens very typically in an underdog story. When the overdog finally gets called out, and when them trying to play the part of the underdog fails, well then, they go ahead and, just like a candle nearing the end of its lifespan, they go into this burst of either violence or hyper-aggressiveness. Well, take a look at Antifa. Take a look at ISIS. Take a look at all these groups. What's happening? They're ramping up their violence. They're ramping up that hyper-aggressive thing, which is further destroying the false narrative. It's exposing it. So here we are. Our nature to root for the underdog is really taking root, because we're starting to see who the real underdog was. Whereas before, yeah, people were rooting for what they thought was the underdog, but it wasn't that full primal rooting for them. I don't know a better way of saying it. Because all of us in the back of our mind kind of looked at it and went, something doesn't add up. This isn't adding up to, my experiences or the experiences of people around me. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and root for them, but it's going to be a tentative thing. And now a lot of people are having that aha moment. So you were lying to me. I was right all along. Yeah, you're a piece of fucking shit. You're seeing that with Anita Sarkeesian. You're seeing that with Zoe Quinn. You're seeing that with Hillary Clinton. You're seeing that with, just the Clinton Foundation in general. You're seeing it with social justice warriors. You're seeing it with feminists. You saw it with Bernie Sanders. You saw it with Comey. You saw it with all of these different individuals, and that list just keeps growing and growing and growing. But the thing is they all have one thing in common. They've all come from positions of authority. Anita Sarkeesian, well, she's pretty high on the progressive stack. She's a woman, right? A woman that decided to talk about the video gaming industry. There you go. Zoe Quinn, a game developer. I don't think she's actually a fucking game developer. I don't consider her one anyway. But you got Zoe Quinn doing all of that bullshit. People have outright called her out on all of it, and she's done and over with. The only people that she even has paying attention to her are either trolls, anti-SJWs, or the very few libtards that are actually still stupid enough to do that. Because even the libtards are starting to kind of back off and go, oh, wait a minute, we're on the losing team, aren't we? We're on the team that's about to go down in flames. Yeah, let's ditch, let's go ahead and ditch all the bullshit that I've been preaching for the last 4 years. I mean, Muslims, do I really need to list out all the ways that they've been in power? That they've remained in power? Even after the end of the Islamic Caliphate back in 1924? didn't think so. But Hillary Clinton, do I need to even mention even 1% of the power that she fucking comes from? Whether it be the big bankers backing her, you know, whether it be the fact that her husband was already a president before, the fact that she was Secretary of State, the fact that she had international powerful connections. I mean, come on. You got ISIS, very well funded by very powerful, very rich countries. They have big oil money behind them. Just saying. Black Lives Matter. I can't think of a more privileged group. Especially given the fact that most Black Lives Matter supporters happen to be white, middle, or upper class who were so privileged that they managed to get into school, into higher education in some of the most powerful countries on the planet, some of the most influential countries on the planet. You know, the countries that actually allow you to go from a pauper to a prince, basically. As long as you're willing to put in the fucking effort. But hell, in their case, they didn't even have to put in the fucking effort. They had that shit handed to them. And then they bitch about it. Somehow trying to say that they're oppressed. Oh. That's not panning out too well for them now, is it? Because all it's doing is it's bringing up all of the privileges that they actually have, all of the legs up on the competition that they fucking have, and people are going, if you have all these fucking advantages and you're still fucking losing, maybe it's not a problem with the system, maybe it's a fucking problem with you. Same thing with women. I mean, good God, women have so many protective laws for them. Yet they sit there and still claim to be oppressed. It's all like, you have every fucking protection in the world. If you keep saying that you're more oppressed now than ever before, maybe we should go ahead and take away those protective laws so you can go ahead and at least go back to only being slightly oppressed. Just thought. I mean, if you're more oppressed now than ever, well, let's see what the changes have been. Laws have been put into place that made it illegal to beat you. Alright? You got the ability to vote. Got the ability to drive. Got the ability to go out and get a job for yourself. Got the ability to own property. Got the ability to make choices about your own body, even though they inconvenience the future life of a child. Got the ability to choose who you marry. Do I need to go on? See, that's the problem with perpetually trying to play the underdog. Trying to say that even though you're making all these large leaps and strides, that you're still the underdog. Eventually people will sit there and look at you and go, at what point will you not be the underdog? Let us know right now. When do you think this will be fair? Because from what we're seeing, you have every advantage and they have every disadvantage, and they're still whooping your ass. But it seems like they're sitting there putting in the effort, putting in the legwork, while you're sitting there on your ass saying that you deserve to win just for existing. That doesn't make you the underdog. That just makes you a lazy, worthless pile of shit. And at that point, you take away all of those benefits and everything else and make them earn their way up. Make them either earn that appreciation for the value of the hard work that the other group was putting in, or let them fade into obscurity. Let them stay down at that level of mediocrity perpetually. And anytime they start to bitch and complain, just turn a deaf ear to them. The thing is at this point, people are getting sick and tired of the pissing, the whining, and the moaning. The constant, oh, woe-is me narrative coming from the people with a fucking silver spoon in their fucking mouth. The working class is sitting there looking at these middle and upper class rich bitch kids bitching and complaining that, oh, there aren't enough jobs. Oh, there's not enough money to go around. Oh, you know, this group is being oppressed. All while sitting there buying overpriced fucking coffee, fucking tweeting on their fucking, you know, $800 iPhone. And then hopping into their fucking 60, 70, $80,000 car and speeding down the fucking road. And then going out and destroying where that working class person fucking works, costing them their job, their livelihood. Because someone out there said one thing that these little fucking rich bitch brats didn't fucking like. And people are starting to reach that snapping point. Especially now that you've got these black blocs that are becoming very fucking militarized. That are coming out with guns. That are coming out with explosives. That are using incendiary bombs. How long do you think until the people of these countries just finally stand up, tell the government to sit down and watch how it's done? We're not far off. And the thing is those intimidation tactics of them sitting there and showing, oh, well, look, this is an Antifa group and we're out learning how to shoot guns. It's all like, okay, so you're just learning how to shoot guns. All right, cool. Do you remember about 4 years ago when you were sitting there and saying that guns were bad and that you would never own a gun and so on and so forth, and other people were sitting there and saying, you know, you can take my gun over my cold dead fingers? Those people have been shooting guns for a lot longer than you. They know how these guns work. They're a lot more accurate with these guns, and their guns are probably much better maintained because they know the little tips and tricks. They know how to soup up those guns just a little bit extra so they shoot just a little bit more accurately, a little bit farther, with a little bit more power behind them. So maybe going ahead and releasing those videos, it might end up backfiring in your face. Along with your guns that you go out, fucking shoot, and then neglect to clean, then bring out to a fucking black bloc. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to end the video because apparently news got out that I was going to be making a video, and so now they're bringing out heavy machinery for God knows what at my fucking neighbor's house, and I'm not willing to deal with it and go through several hundred jump cuts. So have yourselves a nice day. Talk to y'all later.